So halfway through at around the hour and a half mark, I started doubting myself. And
Mm.
I was even telling myself messages like, I'm not going to pass this exam. What do I do when I get the score that I failed?
Ever felt this way? I know I have. So join Pam and I as we chat about those doubts that lead to anxiety and what to frickin' do about them. Thanks. Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle, my special guest, Pam Ramirez with Incline Coaching. Pam and I have a history at Sutter Health together and another history as far as parallel tracks in coaching. So Pam's a professional certified coach with ICF, which is International Coaching Federation, as well as mentor coach. There was was there another certification thing that you got? Can't remember. So if there was, you'll let me know later, right? So just doing a lot in the coaching space, and I love it. And so this topic that we're going to talk about today, and I don't know if anybody can relate to it. I know I can. When we get in those moments of doubt, and we're in a moment that a lot of times it's going to be where it's probably uncharted territory, that we don't have any experience to draw from, or we may get in the middle of it and not be able to clearly see the end. But that's kind of what we're kicking off with. And I know you've got a quote. You have a few of them, and I love it. So if you want to share that, and then we can kind of start chatting. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's good to be in the room with you again.
It's always good to be in the room with you.
Yeah. So here's my quote, and I don't know who wrote it because it's an unknown. So
It's
don't,
attributed to no one. Yes.
right, exactly. Don't let your doubts sabotage your actions.
So this came up when I know you and I were chatting about a situation where you were at. In fact, I think you brought it up to be a good podcast subject. Do you want to share with people what the circumstance was or what came up that led to this?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to give some context to this
Yes.
topic. Yeah. So recently I had to take a 3-hour online proctored exam. It was timed. And I've done those before over the years, and it's never a calm environment. But this particular time, there was something about it. But the interesting thing was that I was super prepared for the exam. I had prepared for a long time, and I
Mhm.
felt confident that everything was gonna, go as expected. So 3 hours, right? So halfway through at around the hour and a half mark, I started doubting myself.
Mm.
And I was even telling myself messages like, I'm not going to pass this exam. What do I do when I get the score that I failed? And I started getting a dry mouth. I started feeling my hands were clammy and I was feeling a little nauseated. And I would just kept telling myself all of these negative messages.
Oh, geez.
And I would look up at the little clock on the computer timing my exam, and I started getting even more stressed and anxious. And so I realized I needed to take a quick break and just get myself together before I could finish
Mm-hmm.
this exam.
Mm-hmm.
So I
What
did
did
that.
you do?
I
Yeah.
had
What
some
did you do?
strategies. I Since I'm a coach, I coach people on anxiety and stress and imposter syndrome and all kinds of
Yeah.
topics, right? So I thought, well, I'll just use some of those techniques that I coach on.
I have a toolbox. Stop.
It's like the mechanics whose car doesn't run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did this, it's called a 3-3 rule for anxiety
Okay.
and doubt too. And so what I did basically was I just stopped. I took 3 breaths, and when
Mm-hmm.
you exhale through your mouth longer than your inhale.
Okay.
So you're inhaling through your nose, exhaling through
Yeah.
your mouth, and it's a longer because you're getting that carbon dioxide out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's building up and causing all those symptoms, right? So I knew that. So I did about 3 or 5 of those. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, you actually look for 3 objects around the room. So you're not just focusing on the screen or the ticking
Mm-hmm.
clock. You're basically looking around the room and just identifying 3 objects. It could be anything. And then you listen for 3 sounds, any
Oh,
sound at all. It's just bringing awareness to something other than what you're focusing on that's
yeah,
giving you all this problem.
yeah.
Then you move 3 body parts. It could be as simple
Oh,
as a finger, a toe, shaking yourself. Just move
yeah.
3 body parts and then take another breath and go back to what you were doing. And it works.
So so for you, did it snap you out of it? What happened?
Yeah, I started feeling calmer. My breathing wasn't shallow.
Yeah.
I could focus on, because the questions, there was 81 questions, and basically you're
Mhm.
getting, each question has 4 possible answers, and you need the best answer and the worst answer.
Yeah.
And so you're reading paragraphs of scenarios.
Hmm.
And so I was just rereading things over and over again. I couldn't advance to the next question because I was so focused on
Yeah.
that one question.
Yeah.
And so I was able to actually have clarity and read the question and come up with the answers. And long story short, I did pass the exam.
I had no doubt. I mean, you talk about there isn't anyone, and I said this to you before we hit record, there's no one that I know that was more prepared for that exam than you. I mean, that just you were totally prepared for this exam. You took a course around all the ethics and value. I mean, all that stuff. Didn't you take a course around? Yeah. So I mean,
Not a course, but I did do a lot of research and studied
yeah,
on my own.
yeah, there was something that you had done that like literally applied all that stuff. And I thought you're ready. What's interesting to me when you were talking is it took me back to positive intelligence and that 6-week course that we went through, and the fact that in that moment when you're the shallow breathing and the clammy hands and everything else, you're in fight or flight mode. So if you could have left the room, you probably would have gotten up and left. Okay, but you can't leave the room in a proctored exam because I remember you telling me everything had to be off the walls and everything else. But what happens is when your system is flooded with cortisol, you're fight or flight, a hungry tiger is chasing you. So the only thing that you can think about is that escape, and not any of the critical thinking and all the learning centers, all the functioning parts of your brain at that point were shut off, right? Which is where you're just like in this loop of Groundhog Day. Just keep reading, and same thing happens, and you're not processing what's going on. I love the simplicity of what you talked about, and that's where the positive intelligence came to mind for me. It's like the shift your focus onto something else. And that deep breathing, there was one I heard the other day. It was called the half breath, that you basically inhale in and hold, right? And what that does is it oxygenates your bloodstream. And it allows you to start thinking and focusing and get clarity. And so do a half breath, hold it for whatever count you want to, and then exhale before you go into something that you may find that's challenging, uncomfortable, whatever it is. But it sets you up to be in the best you as you step into what that situation is. Where did you learn the 333? Because I don't think I love that.
You just pick up things along the way, and I've
Yeah,
been coaching for a few years now, and I'm always writing things down from
yeah,
webinars, things that I hear or read about.
I love that. So have
Yeah.
you had clients use it before?
Yeah,
Okay,
that have
good.
anxiety, and
Yeah,
that sort of helps to calm them down, and then
yeah,
they can move on from there. But
I
there's
love
another quote I wanted to share, and this kind of applies to what I just said.
yeah,
It's removing doubt is like removing a blindfold.
yeah. Well, and so you were able to start seeing what was going on and what was in front of you because you're clouded over what's happening. And I wonder, because there's any number, because you and I talked about what does it have to do with leadership or anything else? It has a ton to do. If we go into something to where we may step into a role that we've never done before, or a situation that we've never been in before, or a situation we're going in that we're maybe a little intimidated. Let's just say that the players at the table outrank us, right? And people can go into those situations and become intimidated at the thought of the environment that they're going to be stepping into. And I think those kind of things are important to realize or recognize, where am I and what do I need to center myself, ground myself, whatever that means for you, right? Because it can mean different things for different people. And then get clear on what role we're playing when we step into it, right? So for you, and I remember talking to you beforehand, visualize success. You've got this, right? But even halfway through, as you've got everything working against you to set you up, you've got a timer that's counting down the time, which you can play tricks on your mind. You're not in a normal environment for you, and you've removed everything off your walls. You know that you're being recorded, you know that you're being watched. And so all that stuff is nerve wracking. It would be like somebody, I remember when I did a 10 key when I was in accounting, the calculator. I'd be zipping through or on the computer, flying through numbers and everything. And all it has to do, someone goes, "Oh my God, you're fast." And all of a sudden, I can't do it to save my life. Right? So you set it up in these situations that someone's watching. And if we're so focused on that and the awareness of all the stuff that's not typical, we kind of check out of who we are. And I love that practice to be able to get somebody back to it present, thinking again, feeling okay. What other thoughts do you have about that when it may show up for people, or maybe it's shown up for you, and other tips and tricks that you have, because I'm sure you've got a few of them in your back pocket.
Yeah, I think when you make a decision, and this is especially at work, but it's both your personal and professional life.
Yeah.
When you're making a decision and you start doubting if that was the right decision, and then maybe you don't move forward on it because you're stuck, and you're in a downward spiral where you're just
Yeah.
thinking
You
it
know
was.
what, one that came to mind for me when you said that is I'm recently, as I produce, shorts and reels and stuff from previous podcasts, I go back and listen to previous podcasts. And one of them was Dr. Z. So she was in the room and she was talking when she was a principal, new to being a principal. She wanted people to like her. And so that doubt thing played into her. And she would talk to somebody, make a decision, and then talk to somebody else and change her decision, and then talk to somebody else and change a decision. So those doubts can feed into leadership in different ways and cause you to back away from a choice that you made, right? Or thoughts that you have about it. And I think in those situations too, it's important to get clear at the beginning what the outcome is, what your role is in it, like you went in for the exam or whatever it may be. Look for, things to where Houston, we have a problem, where there's, flags that something's wrong, but don't let the doubt be the thing to steer you off course, and come back to, what? I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. Let's just play this out to see how it ends up on the other end and not vacillate, because I think that's one of the things in leadership. If you're changing all the time, right? What message are you giving to the rest of your team? How can they have confidence in the path that you've chosen or the next step that you're going to have if you're programming them to go, well, I'll just wait because it could change tomorrow?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Another thing I can say for myself when I was working for
Yeah.
an organization full time
Yeah.
was just when you're sitting at the table with a group of leaders and C-suite folks, and you don't speak up because you're thinking that what you have to say isn't going to be accepted, or that you don't know what you're saying, or you start doubting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you're at the table, so it's like,
Yeah.
well, there's a reason you're at the table.
Yeah. That's a really good call out. What did you do in those situations? Because I have thoughts too, but I'm curious what you would do in those, because you've had those examples as well.
Personally, or when I'm coaching.
Yeah, both. I think both animal. Yeah, both are applicable right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's quite a few people I've coached that have had those kind of
Yeah.
stories.
So
Yeah.
what do you do? What do you recommend?
Well, once again, it's to just maybe accept that you're doubting yourself.
Hmm.
and start using some of those strategies to kind of calm yourself down and tell yourself a different story.
Mhm.
There's a reason why you're at the table.
Mm.
You have something to say.
Yeah. I love that. I've had leaders too. One, in fact, it was funny because very strong personality, and yet depending on the scenario that you got into, and it was one of those things that it was people, title wise outranked her. And she became quiet as a mouse in those scenarios. And there's this narrative and this story going on around that stuff. And I think part of it is, especially if you're newer to experiences in dealing with, environments that people put you in so that you can develop, you have the opportunity to develop and grow, you have the opportunity to get optics to different people in the organization, is you don't know when to say something, right? Because you have a lot of thoughts going in. I think a lot of it is, am I going to throw this thing out there that they're like, you're an idiot? Of course we know that, right? So for me, the first line of defense or the first filter that I'm going to ask myself is what I'm thinking of saying, is it going to move the room forward, right? Is it information that will help close a gap, make a decision, whatever that may be? And if it's not, if it's just a question I may have on something that I believe that maybe everyone else in the room knows the answer, I'm going to write it down. But if it is an observation or something that I have that I think, okay, they need this information to be able to make a better decision, step in. Step in and just share whatever it is, and then you can retreat if you want to. But I think that's the first thing is the contribution we're going to make, is that the thing that's going to move the room forward. Um, Anything else? Thoughts you have around this? Because I think I think it happens way more than what people realize. It's happening at leaders, and I'm going to say this, at all freaking levels of organizations, because we don't know what we don't know. And so I think one of that, and you've probably seen it with the people that you coach, one of the things that I can say is we all have this in common, is when we go to whatever level of leadership or whatever level of challenge we put in front of ourselves, we still have something to learn. We're never going to get to this point. It's like, I know it all. And so all of us humans are faced with that next thing that we've never done before, or the next challenge that we have. The challenges get larger and bigger with more consequences, larger impact, if you will, the higher up you move in an organization. But we're still faced with those challenges that are appropriate for our skill level and experience level. So we're all similar in that way. So we're all faced with those. I'm not sure I can. I've never done this before. Is it even possible? We all experienced during COVID. And I think we experience every day as we step in to challenge ourselves, because if we're not learning and growing, that's what we're here for. We're just stagnant. So I think it's way more common than I think what people realize. I think individuals admit it, but I think way more than what other people realize about other people.
Yeah.
So, um, anyway, thank you. It's a relevant topic. The last one I'll give is Nelson Mandela, which this one I love because it's just something to think about. That it always seems impossible until it's done.
Yeah.
So the one that goes along with that, it's one that I tell a friend of mine all the time, is she would get bored in the job and she would want to take on, she's like, oh my God, I'm bored. And then ask him for more stuff. She would ask for more stuff. She'd get the more stuff assigned, right? So she still had original stuff, and then she'd get new stuff. And then she'd be stressed. Oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, it's always difficult until it's not. You're gonna get to a point where this is so commonplace it's not new anymore. And I said, think back of every time that that's happened. And she's like, yeah, you're right. So it's always impossible until it's done. It's always difficult until it's not, right? And the doubt one, it's don't let the doubt sabotage your actions. So don't get to this place of inaction because you're questioning whether or not you can be successful. It's the right thing to do, whatever it may be. Yeah. So thank you for this one, and thanks for sharing your story around it. What are one or two things you want people to walk away with?
Well, there was another quote by Deepak Chopra that I really like, and I think it's applicable here. And it is, when in doubt, doubt the doubt.
I do like that. I do like that. And I think maybe that's it. And one of the things, it was funny, it's come up as themes recently, Pam, and I don't know if you experienced this, is that with words and the stuff that we say to ourselves, for instance, the narrative that you had playing in your head, right? If you were to say that thing out loud, okay, odds are the words would feel heavy. It's my guess. Okay, my hallucination that the words, if you were to say them out loud, they would feel heavy. I think that's an indicator, that's a flag. So for instance, doubt the doubts is if you're saying this stuff and the story that you're telling yourself feels heavy and weighted, it's a lie. So tell yourself a different story that doesn't feel so heavy, because that's going to be the truth. And odds are that's the thing that's going to empower you to be able to move forward through whatever it is. So if the words feel heavy, chuck them to the sidewalk, figure out some other words that actually, are lighter and move you forward. But yeah, I agree. And we all have it. I mean, I've never lived today, right? The only stuff I've lived is yesterday and the days before. So every day is going to be something new and different than what it was before. So, I mean, it's have excitement and look forward to what's coming, and not dread and doubt that, oh my God, I've never done this before. None of us have. So until next time, this is Leadership Soundbites. Please like, share, subscribe, do the little bell thingy where you get notification, and have a freaking awesome day. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. You too.
Okay, bye.